Can home-cooked meals help stave off dementia? The S&P 500 could hit rock bottom by May. And is it out of date to think about a retirement age? That and so much more on this week's episode of Elevate Your Wealth.
And now, Elevate Your Wealth with Mark Stimpson and Casey Elkins.
Welcome into Elevate Your Wealth. Your hosts, Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, Craig Roth, part of the team at Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle. Again, certified financial fiduciaries, well over 80 years of experience between these three, and it's all about getting Seattle ready for retirement. I'm Morgan Patrick. Pleasure to jump on. Going to give you a couple opportunities to do a couple of things during the course of the show. One, obviously, you're going to listen, you're going to learn, but the opportunity to get on their calendar, no cost, no obligation, and talk about your retirement situation, that is going to be ongoing during the course of this show. We also have Break the Glass. It's the new book. You can go to breaktheglassbook.com. Get signed up there. They'll ship it out to you free of charge. Break the Glass. Again, go to breaktheglassbook.com. Gentlemen, before we dive in on our first topic, let's just check in how the week went. Casey, we'll start with you.
Oh, it was a good week. Yeah, good week. Had some nice weather here in Seattle, which is great. Mariners had a little road trip, and they're coming home here soon enough. So we're looking forward to getting some more games in. We won't talk about how that road trip did or didn't go. We'll leave that to the viewer to find or the listener to figure out for themselves. No no spoilers. But we're still excited. We're still excited about what the rest of the year brings, and just keeping it positive over here, Morgan. Right, keeping the positive energy. That's right.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Mark, what about you?
Well, we got some construction happening in the office. We're getting close to getting our new offices done that we've been looking forward to for a while now. Craig will be getting a new office, so I'm sure he's excited about that. Yeah, he'll have some windows now instead of being in solitary confinement. So, but yeah, we're looking forward to that, and we had some really nice cases happen last week. Helped some folks out with some Roth conversion stuff. So yeah, we're pretty excited about what's going on in the office right now.
So, Craig, when you move into this new office, is it like 1,500 square feet, hot tub? What are we talking about?
Well, I'm not sure. All I've been told so far is that I am going to love it. So I'm sure that's true, and I'm so looking forward to it. Just really, really happy and grateful. We welcomed several new clients last week, really happy. Got some wonderful communications from clients we brought on board a couple of months ago now about how happy they are and how calm they are about retirement now. And that's really all the point. So that was wonderful. The sun is shining. I got to play some tennis this weekend. It was pretty much perfect.
Nice.
Got a lot
Casey referred to nice weather. And if you're listening to us a la the podcast outside of the Seattle market, define nice weather, Casey.
The sun was out. Let's just go with that. Yeah, it wasn't raining. It wasn't gray. The sun was out. Probably still a little cooler than we'd like it to be. But, in Seattle, we really got to work ourselves up to those warmer temperatures, right? We're not accustomed to that like the SoCal folks might be and folks in other parts of the country. So
we're North Carolina.
Yeah. We're getting there. We're working on it, Morgan. All right. I can see you trying to mock me over there, but we're working on it.
I just wanted to clearly define nice.
Yeah, what's nice for us?
What's nice in Seattle? And people in Seattle, you guys know.
Oh, 60 is perfect.
Somebody jumps on from the Midwest or the East Coast and they listen to Elevate Your Wealth and they're like, what is nice weather in Seattle? They just want to know. It's
a little different.
Exactly.
All right. So, gentlemen, we're going to get into, and again, this is one of my favorite parts of the show because we kind of get to look behind the curtain on how you guys are thinking about retirement planning, because what Elevate Your Wealth does, powered by Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle, is they go out and they peruse everything that's going on in the world of retirement planning, and they grab things that they really are interested in and they think you're going to be interested in too. So the first one, right out of the box, can home-cooked meals help stave off dementia? Who came up with this one? And let's talk about it.
You know what? I'll let him speak for himself. Who came up with this one?
I did.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Craig. Yeah.
I did.
You know what? I thought it was cool, right? I thought it was interesting. It's an interesting take. It's a little different than what we normally talk about. This is a finance show, but you know, at the end of the day, it's really a retirement show, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why this is interesting, and this kind of branches out into a few things. But and I'll let you jump in on this too, Craig, and talk about kind of why it struck you. But I just think it's really interesting to note that those habits and retiring to something and finding something fulfilling and doing things that you want to do in retirement is what this is supposed to be. And you know what, that might sound like a no-brainer, but at the same time, the amount of folks that we've talked to that don't truly have a goal for their retirement and what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, we do see that quite a bit. And that's why we're always talking about this, because the more active you stay, the more enjoyable that life's going to be. And you know what? The interesting part here too, this is not an expensive activity, right? This is in reality kind of a cost savings activity, cooking a meal at home. But the idea that it has mental positive impact, it has positive impact for just what you're doing with your life, spending time with your partner, all those kinds of things. There's a lot of value to that. So it really kind of stuck out to me from that perspective, and I thought it was a cool one that Craig brought up.
Yeah, Casey, that's exactly why I brought it in. You know, we talk a lot on the show about making sure that you have things you enjoy doing in retirement. A lot of folks, you know, when that next week comes up and there's no morning meeting and there's no emails from work to address, they can end up sitting on the couch and just, you know, staring at the TV or staring at out into the yard and wondering what to do. And cooking, if you think about it, requires a lot of skills, right? I mean, first you got to plan, then you got to go buy the stuff, then you got to chop it all up, then you got to follow the recipe or make one up, and then you've got to execute that, and then you get to enjoy that in the end. So it's a really wonderful activity. You know, my brother's a chef, and I always watch with amazement how he goes through a kitchen like a tornado and something beautiful comes out at the end. And I think that for folks who have retired to be able to enjoy that is very important. And if you're going to reduce your risk for dementia by, it says 30%.
That's crazy.
30% just doing this a few times a week is pretty powerful.
It's funny you mentioned that, Craig, because I thought what was interesting, you don't have to cook 5 days a week, too. I thought it makes this statement here. It says, interestingly, those who were less adept at cooking showed an even greater reduction in dementia risk, nearly 70%. So even those that aren't adept at cooking can really benefit from this. So that's surprising. And I know some listeners have heard me say my grandfather developed Alzheimer's and, you know, ultimately passed away from that. But he was also 97 years old when he passed away. But the point was, you know, he didn't like to cook, so he wouldn't have been one in that category. Now, my grandmother cooked a lot, though, right? So she was cooking. So this is very, very interesting that, you know, I happen to enjoy loving to cook, and Casey does too. He cooks a lot. He loves the grill. So I just think, like we've been talking about, when you stay active and you stay busy and you have to plan, and like you said, there's a lot of prep work, it just keeps our mind more active. And I just think that's really what this is boiling down to, is keeping the brain, you know, going.
It is, right? Because it's atrophy, right? Yeah. And that's real. I mean, if you've ever broken a bone and had your arm casted or your leg casted, when they take that cast off, that leg or that arm is noticeably, I mean, shockingly so, smaller than your other arm, right? So I went through that. I broke my right arm, and by the end of it, my right arm was so thin and really frail looking when they got the cast off. And then we'll save this story for another day, but I got the cast off, and 2 weeks later broke the left arm. But that's just living life, right, Morgan? I got to get out there. But nonetheless, the point being, right, that, you know, you experience that, and it's true, and it's the same thing for retirement. If we don't use our minds, right, if we don't find something to occupy ourselves, goals should not disappear simply because you're no longer in the secular world. You should still have goals, right? You know what? I got to share this because I think this is so great. I was talking with a client last week. They're actually in Texas, so they're out of the state here. Just really great folks that we love working with. And I said, so what are you working on this week? He's already retired. And he said, you know, I have homework to do. And I laughed, and he laughed, and he goes, I'm part of like this art club And we had homework, and I have to paint this picture, right? And you know what? I thought it was so cool that he was like, yeah, I got to get this done, right? Because he could just say, I'm retired. I don't actually report to anybody. I do whatever I want. Like, no, I'm not doing it, right? But he said, no, I'm going to get it done. And he had it planned out what he was going to do and the whole thing, right? And it was really, really cool. And so I just think that that's important. And so as we're talking about this, it all comes back to having a plan, right? You can't meet these goals in retirement without a plan. That's what this is all about. And to do that, to be able to meet the goals that you have for your personal life in retirement, you need the finances to do it, right? So this is your opportunity. If you've been listening to the show, please take advantage of it. Exactly who you hear on the show is exactly who we are in the office. We'll sit down and talk about what you want your goals to be, what you want your retirement to look like, what type of risk you're taking, when you should start your Social Security. We'll even talk about the actual things that you want to do in retirement. Maybe take a cooking class or travel the world, whatever it is, because the goal is that the finances should fit your life, not the other way around. So this is your opportunity to get a written financial plan. Please don't hesitate. Pick up the phone and give us a call.
You never know what you're going to get on the show every single week. And today we're cooking up all things about retirement. So important, again, to have a plan and be prepared, and an opportunity to work with Elevated Financial Management. And again, no cost, no obligation. It's right now. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. Again, call the number, secure an appointment, 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. What's cooking next? Well, you're going to have to tune in to find out. You're listening to Elevate Your Wealth. Elevate Your Wealth, powered by Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle. Your hosts are Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, and Craig Roth. And between the three of them, 80-plus years of experience helping hundreds of their clients get ready for retirement. They're certified financial fiduciaries. Check out the website, efmnw.com. That's all letters, efmnw.com. There are links to the TV show, our radio show, and podcast forum. That's all there for you. Information on Break the Glass. We're going to talk more about the book here in this segment, and you can pick up a complimentary copy. They'll ship it out to you. Just go to breaktheglassbook.com. That's breaktheglassbook.com. Fill out a few things. They'll ship that out to you, again, free of charge. Again, I'm Morgan Patrick. Pleasure to jump on. We hit the latest topics when it comes to planning and being prepared. Next up, guys, we go from, menus and diet and, cognitive and, avoiding dementia, cooking more at home, to now the S&P 500 could hit bottom sometime in May. And 6,000 is the stock market's correction floor. So just your thoughts on kind of the topsy-turvy we've seen over the last 3-4 weeks.
The article is very sky is falling, right? And you know what? We understand the feeling, right? We do. And there's a lot of articles like this. When the market is on a tear to the upside, there's articles like this. And when the market is staggering, there's articles like this, right? There just kind of always is. We don't talk about these a lot because we try not to get caught up in the fervor of all of it, right? And the hysteria that comes with a great day in the market or a bad day in the market, or there's a war over here, or somebody sent a crazy tweet or whatever it is. We try to avoid all that because that's not the type of planners that we are, right? That's not the type of planning that we do. We're not here trying to time the market. That's not what this is about. It's about retirement. But the reason this catches our eye from time to time is to just try and help calm people's nerves, right? And let you know that if you have a plan, this is not the scary headline that a lot of people feel that it is, right? And you know what? The market, it could turn into a bear market before the year's over, right? Yeah. It could happen before the month is over. I don't know. But it could also finish at an all-time high too. So, we don't know. And that's really the point. That's why we get caught up on it from that perspective, is because we want to continue to preach the message of having a plan. That's what allows you to deal with these types of crazy things. And when the world is wild, you can feel some confidence in what the future looks like because you have a plan.
Yeah, I just think, the old saying, history tends to repeat itself. And there's a lot of truth to that, right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
And we are overdue for a pretty big correction. Not, these up and down days are amazing, what's happened over the last several months, right? They have been wild swings. So I just like what Casey was pointing out. We want our clients to be successful when we have weeks or years like this. That's the point. We don't want them stressing, because if you are getting ready to retire, you're in retirement early on, and this is happening, and you're drawing money out at the same time, and the market does correct, you can be in serious trouble. We do this in our classes, sequence of return risk slides, and it can be devastating. So again, those that have a plan, we don't worry about them as much because we have a way. We don't necessarily be drawing out of the stock and bond bucket, our red bucket, at the time when the market is correcting, right, or going down. We want to have other sources of income, because the goal is, when we save money in a 401k or an IRA, we always ask, what's the end goal for those dollars? And 90% of the clients will tell us, well, I want to be able to live the life. I want to do things. I want to be secure, which means we have to turn it into what? Income, right? And so if the income is set, we have assets that we're trying to grow for inflation purposes, long-term growth, well, that allows us to take more risk because we've got our income set. I just think that's what comes with having a true plan.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the biggest things that we see people making mistakes with as they're moving close to retirement is taking more risk than they need to, right? Now listen to that phrasing, right? It's not about taking more risk than you're comfortable with. You may be comfortable with that level of risk, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But are you taking more risk than you need to? More risk than is actually efficient for the plan? And the reality is why do you take the risk in the first place? We were talking about this the other day, right? Why does anybody take the risk in the first place? It's because of the potential reward. You wouldn't take the risk if you didn't need that potential reward, right? There's a balance there. At a certain point, you have saved enough money in your retirement accounts that you no longer need to take that risk. You have accumulated the asset. You've got the nest egg. Now it's about using it wisely and protecting what you have. And if you continue to take the risk, like you're 35 years old and you're trying to build the nest egg for retirement, that nest egg could easily be wiped out when you start spending and you start taking those trips and you no longer create your own income by your employment. So it's really important to kind of have those thoughts and to kind of negotiate with yourself to figure out, where should you be? Am I actually in the right spot? Maybe the risk I'm taking, maybe the volatility isn't uncomfortable, but it's probably not uncomfortable because you've gotten used to it, because the market's been volatile for the last 35 years while you were saving for retirement. But now you're at a point where, do you actually need to keep taking that risk? And I think that's the question that people really need to ask themselves, right, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely, Casey. And we do want to be careful about, fear mongering and unnecessary anxieties. But it is true that, bear markets do happen, right? We talk about that in the workshop. There have been 16 bear markets since the Depression. They fall, somewhere between 35 and 40%, and they last about 9 months. And, when you're saving for retirement, those are actually opportunities, right? You're buying, your dollar cost averaging, all that works really well. But when you're living on that money and you're distributing that money and you're taking out money while the market's falling, well, that is truly a reason for concern. So when we build the plan, right, and Mark mentioned this earlier, the buckets are very important, right, so that you have an amount at risk that where you can let the market do whatever it needs to do, including what it's doing today. And while you might not like it, it's not going to be a catastrophe to your plan if it doesn't work out.
There's an interesting perspective comment on this article. It says, your perspective in this discussion hinges on whether you're a long-term investor or a short-term trader. For long-term investors, corrections are nothing more than a cost of doing business. That statement is really right on the money when you really think about it, right?
It is,
I just love that statement, because there is a cost to do business. But if we have a long-term goal, some corrections, some volatility can be really good. Like Craig just mentioned, you can buy at the dip and watch it come back up. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. But again, it's boiling back to you have a plan so that you don't get crushed like some of our clients that we've met with over the years have done because they got too aggressive at the wrong time.
Yeah. And you know what? This article says something. There's another quote that I think is really ties in with what you just mentioned, Mark. It says, the discussion so far has assumed that U.S. market weakness will bring no worse than a, quote, typical correction, a decline of 10 to 20%. So let's focus on that 20% number. If you saved $1 million for retirement and there's a decline of 20%, you lost $200,000 if you're invested full tilt to the market, which a lot of people are, and they don't realize that, right? So you've lost $200,000. That's a big chunk of money. And we can sit here and say, oh, well, it's a typical correction. And we put those terms on it, and suddenly it's no longer scary. Losing $200,000 should be a scary thought, especially when you're approaching retirement.
Yep.
If you're 15 years from retirement and you got $1 million saved, that's great. Take the risk. You got time to make it work. If you're 5 to 10 years from retirement, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you don't have the time frame to deal with that type of loss because the market may not recover it before you're supposed to retire, which means that you either spend less in retirement or you work longer to make up the difference. And then you continue this kind of exposed nature of risk because you're still going to be investing at that point, right? So it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if we're not careful, it doesn't work out the way you want it to. It can really go the wrong way.
Right. As you get closer to retirement, you really just need to remember Mr. Warren Buffett's number one rule. It's not buy low, sell high. It's don't lose the money. That's what's most important as you get into retirement.
What's rule number 2?
Don't forget rule number 1.
Ayo, there you go.
Tell you, it's important. You guys have brought up some excellent points when it comes to people in their portfolios. And a lot of them out there, they don't have planners, they have brokers. And a lot of their stuff is in the market. And if you're watching the market, you're probably right on the edge of panic. So the opportunity to sit down, the opportunity to talk about planning, the opportunity to, if you're close to retirement, map this out. Get that protection. Make sure you have your retirement, lined up in order and ready to go. Mark, we've got spots on the calendar with Elevated Financial Management. Walk us through.
Yeah, if you're listening to the show right now and you want to have a conversation about your specific situation, you saved $250,000 or more, please reach out, give us a call. All we're going to do is have a conversation. No more. You're going to leave your checkbook at home. We've been talking about possible corrections in the market. But what about taxes? I want everybody to know we have a wonderful CPA in our office that helps. We're doing a lot of Roth conversion right now with clients. It's a big, hot topic, right? But what about Medicare and Medicaid planning, long-term care planning? There's so much that goes to true retirement planning. So if you need some help and want to have just a conversation, please pick up the phone, give us a call, let us help.
All right, no cost, no obligation appointment available. 866-668-3625. Get you in touch with Elevated Financial Management. Again, the number, 866-668-3625. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. Call the number, secure an appointment, no cost, no obligation. 866-668-3625. We've got more Elevate Your Wealth coming up on the other side. Elevate Your Wealth, powered by Elevated Financial Management. You can find the team right here in Seattle. Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, Craig Roth, and between the three, over 80 years combined experience helping hundreds of their clients get ready for retirement. Again, certified financial fiduciaries. I'm Morgan Patrick. Absolute pleasure. Before we dive in on our final article of this show, let's talk about the book, Break the Glass. Guys, you put the book together. It's available to our listeners. Tell us about it.
Yeah, this is a love project that Casey and I did with one goal, basically, to be able to help retirees get a publication. It's not a book that classroom type book. We wrote it in layman's terms so that anybody can begin to understand some of the concepts that we need to understand, whether it be taxes, income, Medicare, long-term care planning, and we wrote it in a way that we have found has been well received. So if you're listening, please think about our book a little bit, because it truly is an easy read. You can read it in probably a little less than an hour. So we kept it short and to the point, but I think it's something that we're very, very proud of, and it's really helping clients, because we get compliments on ones that get it at our workshops. They come in and talk with us about what they want to do, and that we just have the majority of the people that are just really liking the way we wrote it, and it's been a big hit for us.
Well, it's about, information. Knowledge is power.
Yep.
And it's available to you, and it's a complimentary resource. Break the Glass. Just go to breaktheglassbook.com. That's breaktheglassbook.com. Fill out that information. Again, they will ship that out to you. No cost, no obligation, just a better handle on retirement planning, and you'll get to know a little bit more about Elevated Financial Management, Mark and Casey. breaktheglassbook.com. Go check it out. Sign up for it. They'll ship it out to you. Again, I'm Morgan Patrick. Pleasure to jump on with the team, and we're talking about this article now, guys. It's out of date to think about a retirement age. You got this from MarketWatch. Again, you can go to marketwatch.com and check the article out yourself. More Americans want to work into their 70s, and smart companies that are out there are going to find ways to work with them. I think we're seeing this kind of trend. More people are working longer, or more people are going back to work.
Yeah, so Casey and I have a lot of clients. We basically call it the hybrid type retirement, right? And not everybody is retiring at, the old norm seemed to be 65, right? That's when everybody pulled the lever and said, I'm done. That is absolutely not true today. But there is a challenge out there that if you have worked for a company a long time, getting picked up in your mid 60s can be a challenge. We've had several clients tell us that. It seems like the ones that are with the company, they're still contributing on an important basis to the company. Those companies are keeping those employees on longer. But it is going to be a challenge if you do have to find another job at another company. I understand, if I'm going to invest in someone, I probably don't want to invest in somebody that's 70 versus somebody that's 50 or 45, right? I think that goes without saying. But I think there's a lot of value that somebody with a lot of experience can bring and help companies. And I just think it's not the norm now. There are people working longer and longer. And part of it, too, is just the cost of everything. We're seeing some people that are just saying, you know what? With this type of inflation, I'm not going to be able to weather this storm. I need to keep working.
Yeah, and for some people, it's just because they want to, right? I mean, we see that a lot too, right? I mean, they just enjoy it. They're like, I don't really have I'm not itching to get out the door, and maybe at that stage, we've seen that. Actually, that was the case for my mom. She decided she wanted to work longer than probably most people would have. She worked into her early 70s, but she really enjoyed her job, and they were very flexible. And they had kind of worked to a point where she not got to set her own hours, I wouldn't say, but worked hours that she enjoyed, and she had certain things that she did that she was happy to do, and they needed her around for that tribal knowledge because she had been there for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that there are circumstances where it could be financial. It could just be that you just enjoy it and you want to keep going. And you know what, at the end of the day, whatever the reason is, if it's something that you're okay with, then that's great, right? Because that really ties in with what we talk about a lot, right? Which, again, is just what do you want to do in retirement? And for some people, they want to continue working, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly, Casey. And we talk about the idea of longevity being this risk multiplier, right? Inflation matters more, taxes matter more, risk in the market matters more the longer you live. And it's becoming much more likely that someone might live to 95 or 100 these days. And if you are in a position where you could work part-time, as you shared with your mom, just a small change like that really makes a major impact on the retirement income outcomes. And if you have a longer period, it's a whole new game. I sat recently with a couple that's 60 years old. They like what they're doing. They really don't want to retire until they're 70. Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about the retirement red zone, that 5 years into retirement. And if you get started then, you can certainly have a better chance of planning well. But if you have 10 years, boy, you really have so many opportunities to do things differently. And make your retirement spectacular.
Yeah, we have an attorney client that she made it to age 70.
Yep, she went to 70.
Yep, and she was the lead attorney for a healthcare company in our local area here. But what was amazing is she did not turn her Social Security on until she was 70. Now that makes a big difference. That extra 30% that she's going to get forever. Now she has to live long enough. We get that. And she eats well, takes care of herself. And I think there's a really high likelihood. We were talking about, dementia and eating earlier in this show. And I think in her case, it's the amount of money that she's bringing in now with the planning we did for her is more than what she was making as a lead attorney. So again, it's all about a plan and your specific and unique situation that can do some wonderful things to create situations in your retirement that you might be just so thrilled about if you learn different strategies and different ways to do things in retirement.
I mean, we're having this discussion again. When you start thinking about retirement, a lot of people are working longer if they have that option. Now, let's flip it. We've got a situation where maybe retirement comes at you sooner than you were thinking.
Yeah.
There's downsizing going on. AI is having a huge impact on the workforce across the country. You may be looking at an early retirement, and you need to make sure that before that happens, and it may not happen, but there's the possibility of you might be in retirement before you were prepared or you were thinking about it. So, guys, just the importance of sitting down, having a plan for the what-if scenarios. And a big what-if for a lot of people out there is their company does a card shuffle, and guess what? They're out.
Yeah, that is the case. And we've seen that quite a number of times, actually, right? Where folks that one client specifically comes to mind just a really sharp woman, very, very sharp lady, worked in the biogen world and had done that, I think, for 5 or 6 different startups. And really just good at what she did. But she was a little bit older than the new boss, right? And the new boss was trying to kind of bring it younger on the scale, I guess you could say. And so she got pushed into retirement a couple years earlier than she had planned. Now, you'll notice, though, what's important there, right? It's earlier than she planned. So here's the key. She still had a plan, right?
Sure.
That's the difference, right? And I think just because we might be thinking or planning that we're going to work 5 more years or 10 more years, or I have this horizon, I'm 62, but I'm going to work until I'm 70. That doesn't mean that you don't have a plan, right? Because there's still contingencies, things come up. That's really the I think our message behind all of this, right? Is you need a plan one way or the other. And your plan can be to work until you're 75, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to happen. What if there is health concerns? What if you do get laid off and you can't find a job? Or what if you get to 75 and you decide, this is great, I'm working until I'm 78? Well, you can do that too, right? But the key is to still have that plan that allows you to have the confidence one way or the other. And that's what we see sometimes that people miss when they are planning on working longer. They don't put together an actual financial plan. They just go, well, I'm not retiring for 5 more years, so I don't need to get that going yet. Why not? This is your runway, right? This is your opportunity to have an impact, and maybe there's something you could do that makes those next X amount of years easier, right? Or more enjoyable or whatever it is, but it's worth the conversation.
Yeah, and interesting in connection with that is, we've had some clients that didn't realize how much of their social life was tied up with their workmates.
Good point.
And things that they did at work. And I just think I like talking about this with our clients because if we don't, they can get really frustrated. We had one come back to our office a couple weeks after she retired and admitted she didn't realize how tough it was going to be because she didn't have that routine. And her friends, the bulk of them, were all intertwined with her work. And that was a struggle for her. She admitted that this is not what I thought it was going to be. So this is something you need to be talking through with your planner because it's not just about the money. There's so much to the emotional piece of this. If you leave that out, all the money in the world isn't going to make you happy. That's what we've seen over the years for sure.
Tell you, it's important to have a plan. You don't know what you don't know. And if you're, as Mark mentioned, sitting on a portfolio and you're like, I'll plan later, later may happen really quick. If you are not prepared, it can throw you for a loop. So, opportunity right now. Get on the calendar with Elevated Financial Management. Casey, walk us through the appointment.
Well, this is for folks that want that plan, right? Like you said, Morgan, if you recognize that your portfolio is not a plan, your statements are not a plan. Statements now will tell you how much maybe you could expect for income, but there's no guarantee of that. What happens if the market corrects? What happens if you get forced into an early retirement? The statement doesn't tell you when you should start your Social Security or the type of risk that you're taking, what to do for Medicare. Here's a big one. What are taxes going to look like? That has got to be part of your plan. If taxes are not factored, you do not have a plan. So this is it. This is your chance, your opportunity. It's no cost, completely complimentary, no obligation. We'd love to chat with you and see how we can help. Please don't hesitate. Pick up the phone and give us a call.
As Casey just said, again, no cost, no obligation. See if you're on track for your retirement, and maybe you've got some concerns. Maybe you want to work a little bit longer. Maybe the rug's going to get pulled out from under you. You just don't know. Make sure you have a plan in place. 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Again, if you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies can work best for you. Call the number now, 866-668-3625. When we return on Elevate Your Wealth, we've got some questions for the team. We'll see how they handle them coming up next. Welcome back in. This is Elevate Your Wealth. We're helping Seattle retire, powered by Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle. Your host, Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, Craig Roth, over 80 years combined experience helping their clients get ready for retirement. Certified financial fiduciaries. I'm Morgan Patrick. A pleasure to jump on. I want to tell you about a website. Treat it as a resource. All letters, EFMNW.com. That's EFMNW.com. Links to the TV show, and again, radio shows and podcast form. Information on retirement, background information on Mark, Casey, Craig, the entire team. And again, you can kick the tires there as well. That's EFMNW.com. All right, we're at our question portion of the show. Craig, you're going to get the first one. Here's the category. My statement shows gains, but I still feel uneasy. Why is that? So here we are. Think about it. You've got it in a situation where, here it is. It's in front of you. And people are uneasy about their money.
Absolutely. I think I saw something many years ago that I think is still true today. Money is the number one concern for most people, followed by their health. And that says a lot because people know you need the first one to secure the second one in many cases. And this, I think, is a great question that speaks to the idea of whether you know deep down if you're in the right place. There's a discussion these days talking about us having two brains, right? We have the one in our head, and then we have the one in our gut. And it's the one in our gut that gives us that weird little feeling that this person is talking about, right? Something is wrong. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I know it needs attention. Listen to it. Give it some attention. Find out what it is that you need to do to get to a place of comfort. There's an old speculator back from the Depression days, I think his name is Jesse Livermore, who said that if you can't sleep at night with what you own, sell down to the sleeping level. And that just means figure out how much risk is appropriate for you, what you're comfortable with, find that level so that you can allow the market or any of your other investments to do what they need to do without you losing sleep.
Yeah, that's it. I totally agree with you, Craig, right? And, I think one of the biggest things that folks can do to actually create that security, and I appreciate your mentioning like the gut brain, right? That's a big thing. And I think all too often people don't pay attention to that. And they don't listen to it when it comes to this because you watch these shows and they talk about, it's a paper loss, right? And average the return this and average return that, and these stocks or this fund had a great day, and again, this isn't meant to be fear mongering, but are you listening to your gut, right? Are you listening to that pit that you feel in your stomach. And we would say, yeah, it is something that you need to listen to. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to make this, overreaction. That's not our message, right? But maybe it is time to ask the questions, right? And if you have an advisor, how am I invested, right? That's a good question to ask. How am I invested? And, oh, well, you're diverse, a 60-40 split is not a good answer to that question. It is not a good answer to that question, right?
Yeah.
How are you actually invested? What type of risk am I taking? How much income can I produce in retirement? How reliable and sustainable is that income? What do my taxes look like? Those are questions that your advisor should be able to answer if you have one. And if you can't, then I wonder if you have the right one, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it comes back to.
Some people, Casey, they don't understand how the gains are generated, right? And you mentioned it, or the risks that were associated with those gains, right? So understanding those or being clear on them so that you have clarity about them and not be going, I don't really fully understand this. Some people today are getting involved in crypto. They don't even know what that is, but they want in because everybody's talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And they
It's
don't
exciting.
understand it one bit, right? But it doesn't mean that crypto's necessarily bad, but you need to be clear about it, right? So you can make an investment decision based on good knowledge, not just hearsay or Uncle Bob telling you or water cooler talk, because that's where we can get in a lot of trouble.
It's not just about performance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody said to me recently, they spoke with their old advisor. He said, "How am I doing?" And the guy's response was, "Well, you're outperforming, by XYZ." And he said, "What does that mean? I don't know what that means."
Yeah.
And it's
exactly.
what's more important is does that impact your life? Does it let you do what you want to do? That's really what's important. Is your money serving you?
It's important to be on top of all of this, and we're hitting the team with some questions, and there are different categories. You've got questions about your own situation. You can get answers. Complimentary appointment. Again, you're not going to pay for it. There's no obligation to become a client. You can come in and kind of kick the tires with Elevated Financial Management. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. But you can call at any time. Secure that appointment. 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. All right, next category, Mark, to you. Market returns. And here's the question. I didn't perform as well as the market. Should I be concerned?
I'm going to just say this. The answer to that, the way I look at it, is not necessarily, because we talked about this just a couple minutes ago. It's depending on how your portfolio is designed. If you're worried about income and generating a guaranteed type of income, you can expect it to perform like just an equities portfolio, right? Where we're looking for long-term growth. So again, how your portfolio is structured, you're not going to perform the same. They're not meant to perform the same, right? So in the end, we have a tendency here to always ask our clients, what is the end goal for the money? What do you want that money to do? And then we try and design a plan based on what you want the money to do. It's just not a one-size-fits-all. If you're trying to put that square peg in a round hole, it doesn't work that way. You're not going to be successful, most likely, if you do that. And that's why we're very goal-oriented. We want, we have bucket strategies, Craig and Casey. We all use red, yellow, green. And if you've got buckets set up to do specific things at specific times, you're going to have a tendency to do very, very well in retirement. And you're not going to have to always be thinking or worried about what the market is doing, because that's the last thing. Most people, if you ask them, oh, do you want to worry about what your, money's doing every day as you're, in Italy or wherever? No, I think we all know the answer to that. That's not the way we want to have our retirement work.
Yeah, that's never been on a client's goal list. Yeah, when we ask them what they'd like to do in retirement, I don't think anybody's ever said, I'd really like to be worried about my investments. I don't think we've ever heard that before. Or I'd like to wake up and check the stock market. That's not what anybody wants, right? And it's the truth of it. And so, I think Mark, you hit the nail on the head, right? The real question is whether or not the investment fits what you're trying to do, right? Yeah. And that's why we're always talking about purpose-built, purpose-driven, right? And we've used the analogy before. Let's change it a little bit. You wouldn't buy a semi-truck for anything other than to tow a big trailer, right? You wouldn't buy it for anything other than that. That is its sole purpose. And you know what? It does it really, really well. As a matter of fact, it's one of the only things that can do that, right? But you wouldn't buy it for anything else because it just wouldn't fit. You're going to be disappointed. That doesn't mean that it's not a valuable tool. That doesn't mean that it doesn't serve its purpose and its function. But if you try to compare every investment option solely on its return, you're going to be disappointed with them because some of them are not return based, they're income based. And so what is your goal? If your goal is to just grow your assets, never take any money out, well, then you want to focus on the return. But I promise you that's not your only goal, and at least it shouldn't be for your dollars, for the money that you've saved, because it really does come back to income in retirement. And so how protected are your investments? What type of risk are they taking? Tax efficiency, all those things. All those things that we talk about that maybe you've heard over and over again, there's a reason we keep talking about them because it's really, really important to the success of your retirement.
Yes.
The last one, and I do want to get to this because you kind of alluded to it, Casey, so I'm going to throw this one at you. And the category, my plan feels like rocket science. What if I don't fully understand what I'm looking at?
Yeah, you know what? I tell you what, if something is overly complicated to understand, that can be a concern. Now, I want to be really clear about this. There are some financial tools that are more complex than others. That's why you have an advisor, right? So that advisor should be your trusted source of truth. And if you don't feel that with your advisor, then I think it's time to find somewhere else, right? Now, if you do, that's great. And your advisor should be acting in a fiduciary capacity. The last thing I want for you to have is a UFO in your retirement plan. In your financial junk drawer, you've got that unidentified financial object. That's a serious problem, right? You should know what's going on. We don't want any UFOs in your retirement plan. So you want to know what that looks like, what the investments are, how they work, what the purpose is. And I'll say this, a lot of folks don't ask those questions. They just leave the meeting with their advisor feeling uninformed, and they feel intimidated to ask the question. Please hear me when I say, do not feel intimidated to ask the question. It is your money. You worked hard for it. It is 100% within your right to ask the questions until you feel comfortable. You know what those investments are, how they work, why they're there, and why they're the right investments for you. And if you can't get satisfactory answers to that, then I think you know what that means.
Yeah,
And I just think there's something to be said for simplicity right now. If we're dealing with somebody that's an engineer, let's say, you've got to get into the weeds a lot more with that person, right? But there's a lot of individuals, they don't need that. They like things simple and easy to understand. And sometimes financial firms make things too darn complicated and they throw out too many numbers, and it becomes very hard for the clients that want simplicity. They just get like deer in the headlights. They don't know what to do. So what does they do? They end up doing nothing. And that's a decision. They made a decision because they were confused or they didn't understand what they were going to do.
Da Vinci said the ultimate sophistication is simplicity.
Yep.
Well, it's about just down-to-earth planning. That's what we need, right? That's what Seattle wants, and you've got an opportunity to get rolling on it. Mark, walk us through the appointment. They're available.
Yeah, if you're out there and you've been listening, you've saved $250,000 or more, maybe you've been at Boeing, worked there a long time, and you need some help. You've got questions. We were talking about how simple is it to understand retirement. It's not, right? There's taxes we need to talk about. What about, is your income going to be guaranteed for the rest of your life? What are you going to do with your medical decisions when I have to go on Medicare? Do I get a supplement or a Med Advantage type of plan? What about long-term care? There is so much to understand and different decisions to make in retirement. So please, give us a call. Let us help. That's what we're here for.
All right, that's exactly what we're here for. Call now, grab an appointment, 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. No cost, no obligation appointment with Elevated Financial Management. See if you're on track for your retirement, 866-668-3625. Another edition of Elevate Your Wealth is in the books. For Mark, Casey, and Craig, I'm Morgan. We'll see you on the radio next week.
Investment advisory services offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. All rights reserved.